Matt Robeson, Beyond Politics. And yes, unfortunately, you read that episode title right. Today is Alicia Preston Xanthopoulos' last episode of Beyond Politics. But before we got into her big send-off, we had to talk about the whole mess of things that are going on from the Trump administration. What's the most concerning? Is there a constitutional crisis happening right now? And what do we think is really the strategy? What's really going on behind all of this? And then at the end, yes, we did get to our send-off for Alicia with some very special guests. Not kidding, no joke. Here we go. We are going to try our very hardest to do as we do and have as much fun with deadly serious, horrible things as we can. This is our job in life. We're not a comedy group. This isn't like a satirical kind of show. We're just going to try to make this as palatable as possible.
Maybe it ought to be a satirical kind of show.
We're not going in that direction. This isn't like you're suggesting the Spinal Tap version of this. It's like we need a change in direction. We're going to do a freeform jazz exploration. It's Spinal Tap and puppet show. No, we're still serious. We're still very serious. But what we want to talk about is all of the Trump stuff. But there's so much that it's almost hard to like do list form. So I'm just going to throw out a general question. What is most concerning of all the things that's happening? What's bothering you? What do you think is the biggest impact? And let's go in our ultimate show. Ladies first. Alicia, what's bugging you?
I'll tell you, I'm going to read a Bloomberg headline, and this is what's bugging me. And this is just a microcosm of it. And it says, federal agency fires staff, calls it an error, fires them again.
Oh
that
gosh.
is
It's like Billy Martin.
And this is about the SBA. And it's not that it's about the SBA. And it's not that while this was happening, Linda McMahon and her hearing before Senate committee to become education secretary was referencing her experiences that came from the SBA while being shut. It's just that there's so much going on. It's not organized. It's not precise. And there's chaos. And chaos can be good if you're Spinal Tap. Chaos bad if you're the government and there's tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of employees and 400 agencies. And it's just whiplashing right now. Even if I agree with some of the ends, the means are chaotic.
Is Adam Serwer in The Atlantic made a lot of waves. I'm pretty sure it was Adam, not Caitlin Flanagan, back in 2017 when he wrote an article titled "The Cruelty is the Point." And it was a real reframing of everything going on in the first Trump administration and leaned into the idea. It got coined and sort of adopted. People realized there was a fundamental insight here that actually the amount of cruelty that Trump was putting forward at the time was intentional. It was meant to own the libs. It was meant to trigger people, drive the conversation, get attention, kind of announce disruption with authority. Are you saying, Alicia, that the chaos is the point here? Is that ultimately what he's after with all of this?
I don't think he plans some of the chaos. I think he wants major sweeping. You can tell 3 weeks in, Donald Trump is president. It's different than the past. I don't think he necessarily wants some of the hiccups that come from this, right? Headlines like fire staff, hires them, fires them, and the whole federal freeze that he had to revert back on. Like, he's had a lot of missteps that he's actually had to correct. I don't think he wants to do that. I think his goal is this massive sweeping change, way too much expansive presidential power. And what's happening while he's doing it is this chaos is ensuing and it's being justified. Again, the end is being justified without looking at the means to get there. And that's not cool.
So your entry in the discussion, the competition, the pyramid that we're doing of most concerning is general chaos. Right. Yeah. It's not any one thing. It's just general chaos. It's like I actually met a general once named General Comfort. This is general chaos. My old friend, Corporal Punishment. Paul, what's your entry in the pyramid? What do you put at the top?
First of all, if this was in France, it would be l'État, c'est moi. In other words, the
Ah,
state is me. L'État, c'est moi. Je suis Donald Trump et le chaos, c'est moi. Je suis le chaos. What? So, in a way, the chaos in the federal government currently and in the country mirrors what's going on inside the pathologically corrupt brain of the great orange Cheeto. I mean, it is, you can imagine a guy who stays up all night tweeting, eating chicken McNuggets, that he bounces between getting rid of the penny to firing everybody at the Kennedy Center, to naming himself primo ballerina. I can't wait to see Donald Trump in a pink tutu and toe shoes dancing on the stage of the Kennedy Center as the premier example of American arts and culture.
so
Um, so
can
what
you just speak to this? This is an area of expertise for you. I'm not saying that you
are
are
you
trying
calling
to
me? Are
suggest
you
that
telling me I
arts.
am a primo ballerina? No, I'm
Yes,
not.
you are the most delicate doily of them all. No, I'm suggest you're on you were on the President's Commission on the
No,
art.
no, different. You're mixing them up. There are a couple of different arts things. I currently am a special government employee, am serving in the Trump administration currently
Oh,
as
you're
a
a
special
mole.
as a special government employee, I
Uh,
serve on the National Council on the Arts, which is the board of directors for the National Endowment for the Arts, which has issued new guidance about what they can and can't and will and won't fund at this point. It's all very
so they're not
mysterious.
funding any gay stuff. I think we're clear about that.
Anything that smacks of diversity, equity, and inclusion, whatever that is, anything that smacks of the wokedom, apparently is being a little bit downplayed at the moment.
So why haven't you been fired? I guess is yet.
I don't know.
You will be. You're on the
You
chopping
will
block.
be.
I have
I'm
no doubt.
sure.
Yeah, you're so
You know,
gone. Honestly, I
he
don't mean to put
tried.
you on
They just haven't
blast.
gotten to you yet.
Wait a
Musk
second.
hasn't gotten to you yet. He will find you.
The first time around they tried, okay, they appointed somebody to take over from me, but the Senate never got around
Oh, you
to
do.
confirming.
What they're saying,
So
you're saying
what
is you're indispensable.
I'm a holdover, is what I am. I'm a holdover from down under. But so you've got an entire council, by the way, which is now appointed by various Democrats. So I don't know how much longer. I soon will be speaking to my followers from Pirate Arts Radio. So the Ken look.
But what you were saying about people just may not know that what Trump did is he fired the entire Kennedy Center board, which
right.
included people like Karine Jean-Pierre, who, like, let's be clear, Karine should be fired from that board, right? Like, she shouldn't still be there during a Trump administration.
Yeah. Anyway, but here's the point. The point about that was that the Kennedy Center is the apex of American culture. It is the sacred chamber into which all the great artists come. It is the home in DC of the big performances. It represents American culture such as it is. So obviously Trump taking aim at it goes along with his taking aim at the penny. These are symbolic things. In a way, the penny is different than the arts,
but that's not at the top of your pyramid. Like, that's not where the all-seeing eye goes. What's at the top of your pyramid? Like, what keeps you up at night?
I find it kind of interesting that Pete Hegseth has already thrown the Ukrainians under the bus, upending years of American diplomatic efforts and everybody else's by saying, Ukrainians, you're really going to have to give up a bunch of your territory. So let's just get used to that. And meanwhile, Donald Trump is negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So now, Vladimir Putin in charge of U.S. foreign policy, together with Tulsi Gabbard at intelligence. We make Vladimir Putin in charge of Ukrainian policy. Tulsi Gabbard feeding him intelligence from our national intelligence.
I thought you were going to say feeding him grapes. Like, I'm thinking about disgusting
Vladimir,
images are up.
Vladimir, the problem have a grape.
So that's a good entry. That's a good entry. So from Alicia, we have general chaos. From Paul, we have Vladimir Putin is the new American general. I think my entry is probably going to be RFK and bird flu. There's the Daily Today is all about, like, are we on the verge of the next pandemic? And make no mistake, the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, is the reason that we had President Biden. Things were going fairly well for Donald Trump in terms of his public standing, despite everything, until the economy cratered and he really fumbled COVID. And instead of learning any lessons from that, he has put a vaccine denier, and under him, layers. I mean, this is like a deep dive, deep read, but like layers of deputies in charge of vital functions at the CDC, at the health department, vital functions, who don't believe in any public health measures. And look, people can feel all kinds of ways, and they do, about masking and social distancing and some of the measures that perhaps persisted too long in the blue states as we fought COVID. But I think we can all agree that some measure of public health is what was necessary to save hundreds of thousands of lives. We still lost more than 1 million Americans in the pandemic. And the fact that there is now a highly contagious and very dangerous bird flu that for now is limited to poultry. That's one of the reasons that Alicia's precious eggs are so costly, and is now making its way through cow herds. It can't yet be transmitted human to human, but it's not that far of a leap for the virus. And so the fact that our frontline defenders of that are on the side of the virus, that is a major concern.
So, by the way, it's already had incredibly serious economic implications. Just for example, on the eastern end of Long Island, where there are lots of poultry farms and duck farms, they've had to euthanize hundreds of thousands of birds. Ducks, poultry, and other birds have already been killed because of bird flu infection. I guess Robert Kennedy doesn't want anybody to know where it's spreading, so we won't have any reports from the CDC about where it's going. And Alicia's precious price of eggs, which we all moan about, the scenes from Costco are scenes of egg panic. People trying to rip pallets of eggs from each other in order to have their morning omelets. And by the way, the Great Orange Cheeto promised to bring prices down, but let's not forget the economic implications. The latest figures tell us that inflation is already starting to rear its ugly head as prices are beginning to rise in anticipation of his crazy tariff schemes and the other things, the chaos that is happening. Because one of the things the chaos does, by the way, is it causes instability for businesses, it causes uncertainty in the markets, and it causes prices to go up.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that was one of the major things that happened this week was tariffs on steel and aluminum after the aborted, that's the only kind of abortion that I guess Trump is okay with, the aborted trade war within North America that, whatever, he declared victory on. These steel and aluminum tariffs hit Canada pretty darn hard. But more important for our perspective politically, they hit US consumers. Trump continues to not understand. It is not a tax on foreign governments. It is a tax on us. It is something that we, American consumers, pay. I mean, Alicia, how high does that rise in the pyramid that the global trade war seems to be off and running?
I mean, Trump knows this. He knows who it affects, but he also knows he can convince them that it's not true. That's what he's been doing for years, right? What you see before you is not what you see before you. Or he can convince them it's good. Or he can convince them it's actually the fault of Joe Biden from something else. I don't know. But he can convince them what they're seeing, experiencing, and feeling isn't true. And these steel tariffs, look, it can come down to what you pay for anything in a grocery store, right? Because if a company is building a new warehouse and all of a sudden their costs are up 25%, that gets trickled all the way down to the consumer who's buying the cookies in the grocery store. And so the idea that I've had people be like, I'm not in construction industry, so I guess it's like, no, everything is going to go up when you start putting tariffs on foundational structure which is what he's doing with these materials, it's going to be a price increase for all of us. Now, one thing I just wanted to note politically back on, you guys were talking about RFK. Am I the only, as a Republican person, that finds this deep irony in all these people who are criticizing Republicans for potentially, they did, but if they did not confirm Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr., we'd primary those rhinos out of office. Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. are Democrats who ran for president as Democrats. How are we the rhinos? I don't understand.
It's a cabinet of the finest. It's the kind of thing that Lincoln would have done, choosing responsible members of the other party who agreed with his philosophy. And as a Republican, he would have had, and Obama talked about it too, bringing in Republicans. He tried to bring Judd Gregg from New Hampshire into his cabinet. Judd demurred. I ran for his seat and lost, and here I am on this podcast. But let's talk about Robert Kennedy for a moment.
Well, can I suggest an answer to Alicia's question? I would like to quote Walt Whitman, who said, "Do I contradict myself? Very well, then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." Maybe what you are saying, Alicia, is that the Republican Party is large. It contains multitudes. I mean, it is okay to hold your mind in the same place between two thoughts of all these people who don't support Trump are rhinos, and that is why we need to support these Democrats who are not qualified for cabinet posts, because that's the most Republican thing we can do.
Remember what Trump said. He said it, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. He said, if I run for president, I'm going to run as a Republican because they're too stupid to know what is happening to them, and I'll win in a landslide. Yes, that's
in the late 90s. It was like 98 Vanity Fair.
So that's where he was. But back to RFK. First of all, two relatively minor things about RFK. Number one, there's going to be a run on earworms at all the fishing stations. So instead of using earthworms, we're going to use earworms for all fishing. And especially in places like New Hampshire and the northern states, there's going to be a run on bear carcasses to make sure we leave them as tokens of affection for our new Health and Human Services Director. But there is something I just want to point out.
Can I take this in a serious direction, though? Because I think we're going into parody here.
I was actually going to make one serious point.
You're going to make one serious point? All right, I will allow it. In any TV courtroom drama, whatever a lawyer proposes, the standard line for the judge is, I'm going to allow this. Like, I'd like to beat opposing counsel over the head with this brick. I'm going to allow this. All right, Paul, I'm going to allow this. Go.
Matt has the splicing block anyway. He can just cut all this out if he wants to. But
I'm planning. You're on the clock, Oates. We're going to see how valuable is this interjection of something serious.
There is something actually that Robert F. Kennedy has talked about, which is a good thing. He has talked about the industrialization of our food production system and what it means for the introduction of chemicals, pesticides, and additives to our food, and what that has done to our general health. This is something that I think is really important. And if he can do something about it, and if he can somehow turn our food industry, because it is an industry and it's the way most Americans eat. They don't generally eat farm to table. They eat prepackaged processed foods. And if he can do something about what happens in that processing towards a more healthier food system, that's a long-term good thing for the American people. How do you like that for a bipartisan, generous approach?
Wait, you're praising a Democrat. Good job.
Yeah, good job, Paul. Here's one problem. As someone who does not eat processed or packaged food, except on an incredibly rare occasion, and I do mostly farm to table, here's the reality. Any increase in regulation creates an increase in cost. And if you look statistically, let's just stick with children. What children eat more processed foods than others? Lower income children. It's cheap food. And so you start increasing the cost, you're hurting low-income families. There's got to be a balance. And my concern with this administration is they don't balance things. They go all or nothing with one thing without looking at secondary or tertiary effects of what they're doing.
Let me drag this onto kind of an even broader plane. And I know that, Paul, you are very focused. You used to talk back in your days in Congress about the industrial food system in America. It's a conversation we had a lot. It was an interest area of yours. I want to go to another interest area of yours, which is the law. There has been a lot of discussion in the past week about, are we in or just on the verge of a constitutional crisis? All of the Trump administration's actions, to the funding freeze, the firings, the just decisions in contradiction of what was passed into law by the Congress to shut down things that Congress has set up and provided funding for. All of this has gone into the courts. The courts have universally ruled against the Trump administration. They've universally put a pause on what he's doing, or flat out said, this is constitutionally crazy. There is no support for this whatsoever. And yet, the New York Times was reporting by Wednesday that the funding freezes are going ahead. The actions, the underlying actions, the Trump administration is kind of taking the probably apocryphal, but attributed to Andrew Jackson approach of, the courts have made their decision, now let them enforce it. They are just thumbing their nose at the judicial branch. Are we on the verge of, or are we in a constitutional crisis?
We're in a constitutional crisis. This was a coup. The coup is proceeding. Letting Elon Musk and his minions in is part of the coup. There's beginning to be evidence that, I don't want to scream too loud about it, but there may be electoral fraud with, for instance, voting machines in Pennsylvania and other places. Whether that's true or not, we'll find out. But in terms of the judiciary, we're in a constitutional crisis because both Vance and Trump and the White House have now taken the position that the judiciary is causing a constitutional crisis with their orders. What that means is they're going to do whatever the hell they want. They're going to ignore the judiciary as they have. They are not complying with court orders. If they don't comply with court orders, what the courts can do is hold them in contempt. If the courts hold them in contempt, what are they going to do? Issue fines? Who's going to pay it? They'll simply refuse to pay the fines. Are they going to arrest people? They'll try to send out federal marshals. But the federal marshals answer to the executive branch. They are the go between the executive branch and the judiciary. Once or twice in the nation's history, notably with Andrew Jackson, he simply refused to honor what the court said. That was in what? The 1830s. Since then, the separation of powers has depended on those in the government following the norms of government, which have included honoring the separation of powers and understanding that the judiciary, in fact, can make orders that bind the executive branch.
This is back to Marbury versus Madison.
Absolutely. Once the executive branch says to the courts, we're not following your orders and you have no way to enforce them, we are not only in a constitutional crisis, we have reestablished a monarchy, a dictatorship, an autocracy, whatever you want to call it, where the only authority is the chief executive.
Alicia, I want to pose this same question to you, but I just want to recognize, and maybe this is me kind of wrongly trying to get into your brain and sort of the way you see things based on your political philosophy and being a Republican, but this has got to feel like a dilemma for you as you evaluate a question like, are we in a constitutional crisis? Because as you alluded to before, some of the outcomes that the Trump administration is aiming towards are not necessarily bad from a policy standpoint for a conservative. They're not necessarily wrong from that standpoint. But adherence to a strictly constructionist version of the Constitution, an original intent and meaning of the Constitution, is sort of a core conservative principle. So how do you think about a question like this of whether we are veering towards or actually in a constitutional crisis?
I don't think we're there yet. I think we're knocking on its door. I think we have to see how the next few weeks and months play out. Look, I am all for cut the crap out of spending. stop sending nonsense to countries that we don't have priorities with, and that we shouldn't be involved in whatever that funding is going for. It's obscene. However, even more than I am a fiscal conservative, I am a pure constitutionalist. And I believe this is Congress's job. Congress should be held accountable that they have approved these fundings, and they should fix it in the next budget. Donald Trump, while I want that funding to be cut, it's not his duty constitutionally. And a matter of fact, it's not within his authority to do it. And the expansion of power of any branch of government will always concern me than any policy outcome we can discuss, because next time it could be the other guy, right? Next time it could be a liberal Democrat that says, we've been given all, and I don't know why Republicans aren't thinking this way. We've been given all this expansive power and control. Now we're going to use it, and we're going to use it to do things that you guys don't like now. And then I'm going to be worried not only that power was expanded, but now I got to worry about the policies while I'm at it. No, I don't think we're in a constitutional crisis yet. I'm not convinced. I saw JD Vance's tweet or whatever it was that brought everyone concern, and understandably, I don't see this administration brazenly just telling the courts to go pound sand when it comes to some of the bigger who's got power messages. They may do some sideways things. They may do some around the bends. At the end of the day, I think our institutions will hold. I think it'll be a bumpy ride getting to that point.
I have a theory about what's going on and what the strategy is here, and I'm borrowing from my own most recent article that's still in draft, may be out by the time this episode is out. And I put forward this theory that what the Trump administration's approach is here, what their strategy is here, is something that the military calls reconnaissance in force. And I quote a retired U.S. Army infantry lieutenant colonel named Les Grau, who provides a pretty good definition for this, actually in a periodical called Armor, which is about armored vehicles. He says that the point of reconnaissance in force is to make an attack that is genuine and threatening and requires the full commitment of the defense, but whose ultimate aim is actually to develop information. You're probing. It's like in the M. Night Shyamalan movie Signs, where there's the military officer who says what the aliens are doing is called probing. The offense is trying to keep its options open. It's if you meet determined resistance to your attack, you can always retreat and assess. If you find a weakness, you can expand into a full engagement. I think what the Trump administration is doing with all of these brazen, to use your word there, Alicia, all these brazen assaults on the rule of law and on norms, to use your term, Paul, is reconnaissance in force. It is a real, genuine, threatening attack that keeps their options open. If it works, if the courts allow it to go ahead, then great. They've achieved their aims. It's like a teenager testing boundaries, right? They're trying it. And if it works, good for them. If it doesn't work, they've still got all their options open. Now, in the article, I suggest that in their back pocket, they have developed now an ultimate secret weapon that I think is scary and effective. And I have double checked it with legal experts who say, yep, that is correct. That is airtight, and it is a checkmate. And people are going to have to read my article to hear what that is. But that's what I think is going on. And so to the question of whether we're in a constitutional crisis, I would say I kind of agree with you, Alicia, that the answer is not yet, because they're keeping their options open. Are they trying to skirt court orders? Yes. Are they trying to like sneak around them and still go ahead? Yes. But have they openly, brazenly defied the court yet and told them to pound sand? Not yet. And I think that's the moment where we'll see. They will be put to the question of how serious about this are we? How far will we ultimately go? And that moment is coming probably pretty fast. And it's too bad it's too bad, Alicia, that you won't be around to process it with because we have to get to the final part of our show where we have to announce, even though in the voiceover at the front and probably in the title of this, we're going to announce it. It's like a soft opening for a restaurant, that this is your final regular appearance with, not that you won't come back from time to time for guest appearances or haunt us like Jacob Marley, but you need to take a step back. Tell us about it.
And it's such a double-edged sword because I love sitting with you guys every week and discussing things. And I love potentially offering some informed opinion to an audience that's probably on the other side of the aisle as me. But I'm busy. My work has kind of exploded exponentially, and I just don't have enough time in the day. And I think the audience knows, but I hope they do. We, the three of us, spend time. We don't just get on here and talk for 45 minutes once a week. We take our efforts to make sure we're informed, know what's going on, create an opinion about it based on education and information. So it's time consuming if we're going to do it right. And I just don't have the time to do it right anymore. And that's kind of a bummer, but it's real.
It seemed to really come to a head over the past few weeks where because you had such an onslaught of work, you had to take a little break. And we brought in a very able substitute teacher. And then you came back last week, and man, I could just tell you were under the gun, as it were. You were scrambling, and you were like one of those plate spinners at the halftime show of an NBA game. But it's like, oh my gosh, how are you keeping all these plates in the air?
I guess I got to let one fall.
Yeah, and we are that plate. But
sorry, I'm gonna miss you guys.
I think we're going to be asking you. We're going to find ways to drag you back in.
I hope
so much that it will recall the country song. How can we miss you if you won't go away? But lest this go unmarked, it is time for the big reveal. So astute observers who might be seeing this on video might notice that there's a very slight difference of look and feel. It's because we're recording this on a different platform. The reason we're doing that is that I was able to get some audio messages passed along from some very special people with a bit of a tribute to our friend Alicia, and I want to be able to share them here. And I should reveal, Paul and I pulled out the stops here. So as people may know, we're Democrats, and Paul was a national co-chairman for Barack Obama's campaign. So we did some digging. I actually worked closely with Karine Jean-Pierre when she was a White House aide during the Obama administration to help with Paul's Senate race. And so, long story short, we pulled some strings, and we have a special message here from a very recent departee of the Oval Office. Let's take a listen.
Alicia is great. I'm serious, no joke. She's the reason I lost. But no hard feelings. Let's split an omelet sometime. And by the way, no joke, I'm serious.
All right. So that was former President Joe Biden. But lest you think that's the best we can do, it is not. Because Paul is what used to be described in the New Hampshire media as an FOB. Yes, there was a letter F. He was a friend of Barack. Paul, you attended Barack's personal Super Bowl party and were served cookies by the hand of the President of the United States. So in another pulling out all the stops move, we were able to get the star in my sky, although not Alicia's necessarily. And let's hear that one.
This is Barack Obama. Alicia is my biggest critic and frankly, biggest pain in my ass. But anyone who can listen to Matt and Paul talk that much has my respect. And let me be clear, you are a patriot, and I'm told you make a mean souvlaki. So let me be clear, even though you drive me crazy, I want to wish you the best of luck. Take care.
All right. So, I mean, I know that must really tug at your heartstrings. But,
that's not real.
Alicia.
What do you mean it's not real?
Alicia.
This is real.
This is real. And proof positive, we saved the best for last. As people know, even though I'm a Democrat, I have some Republican friends. I have actually quite a number of Republican friends. And I maintain some very good connections, even in Trump world. And I can't believe this. But we have the most special call of all. I do not know how we pulled this off. Here we go.
Donald Trump Beyond Poppycocks is a podcast that's failing very badly, horrible. But I want to say that Elsa Van Popsicle is the only good one. She's not a rhino. That's fake news. So best of luck to Alicia Preston Xanthopoulos, and let's make podcasting great again.
So there you go. I mean,
my boss telling it like it is.
yeah, the most spot on thing the man has ever said. I completely agree. Your contributions should not go unheralded, and now they have been heralded by the man himself. So mazel tov.
Thank you. And I'm dying laughing over here. I want to say thank you to you two. I think this has been a great experience. We've become friends. We've had some funny laughs. I don't know what I'm going to do without Paul's weekly imitations and Matt's sometimes obtuse movie references, but I'm going to have to figure it out. And I hope you invite me back to say hello and babble at some point when life slows down.
That is a great note to end on. Although we could bring in Donald Trump just one more time. Should we do that? Yeah, let's do that. All right. We're going to get you out on this for a final time for Paul and Alicia. I'm Matt. We will see you next time, and we will let Donald take us out.
Donald Trump Beyond Poppycocks is a podcast that's failing very badly, horrible. But I want to say that Elsa Van Popsicle is the only good one. She's not a rhino. That's fake news. So best of luck to Alicia Preston Xanthopoulos, and let's make podcasting great again.